going to be a rough next 2 days up on the Hill. Our first guest is Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who represents the great state of Rhode Island. Tell us just kind of like, what are the vibes on the Hill right now? People are feeling very anxious out here. What's it like there?
I think for us, the vibes are pretty good. We've got very good unity among Democrats in the Senate, and we're looking at some really bad proposals by the Republicans that they're obliged to do for the sake of Trump and for the sake of tax cuts for billionaires. But it's not good stuff. They're not coming into this with a great sense of excitement and joy. I think, frankly, there's a little bit more excitement and joy on our side, even though we're in the minority and just fighting back at this point, because I think this doesn't end well for them. We're in the stage right now where they're just voting on the numbers to send out to the different committees, who then have to actually draft bills and send it back to do this dirty legislation that they're going to do. So even this is bad, but when they actually have to write, here's what we're doing to Medicaid, here's what we're doing to veterans hospitals, it's going to be really hard to sell, I think, particularly when the goal is more tax cuts for billionaires who already barely pay taxes in the first damn place.
Now, are you going to be able to call them out on it? Like, first of all, did we end up with one or two bills? Because I know Trump wanted one great, big, beautiful bill that would have all his, like, Project 2025 shit in it. But did we end up with one or two?
The House is doing one.
Okay.
The Senate this one is half. So they've got another one that they would have to do for tax. So it's one on the House side, it's two on the Senate side. This is only the first part of the two. So they're showing a certain amount of, shall we say, disarray already, which again, all in all, I'd rather we weren't having to do this nonsense. But as long as we have to, as long as we're in this position, good to have them show this kind of confusion on their own side. We're
now,
not.
You're a lawyer.
This is bad. It's going to be a strong fight.
You're a lawyer. How do you call out things when they are so obviously unconstitutional? Like, do you just raise your hand and you're like, you guys are jerks, this is unconstitutional? Or like, how are you going to use your law knowledge to fight them?
In this process that we're going into tonight, the reconciliation process, there's very little time for debate.
Okay.
What you spend your time doing is calling up an amendment and then saying what the amendment is, arguing for it briefly, and then getting a vote. So the opportunity to make the argument is in the amendment process. So if you're saying we want an amendment that you can't cut Medicaid without a 60% supermajority, then you can argue about the importance of defending Medicaid and why the hell they want to cut Medicaid when it keeps people in nursing homes and children being born in hospitals and folks getting their opioid recovery treatment support. So that's how the debate takes place. It's in the minute or so that you're allowed to argue for your amendment.
Now, with these Republicans putting these up here, I doubt you're going to get like the legacy dudes like Lindsey Graham putting his name on the bill that says we're going to cut Medicaid. Do you know who they're going to sort of use as sacrificial lambs to put out these horrible bills, or are they just going to try to like sneak it in other stuff?
Well, it goes. This is the instruction. The instruction goes out to the committee saying, "Here's your dollar target. Write a bill and send stuff back." They kind of know what they're going to do, and we kind of know what they're going to do. We know that the 40% cut to Medicaid is being discussed right now in the House, but it's going to be hard. When it's just numbers, you can BS your way around what it's going to be. The hard part is when the committees have to vote on actual legislation that actually hurts real people in real ways that are obviously done just for the benefit of more tax cuts for greedy billionaires. So the real pain point is more in the future, but we're teeing it up because every chance you get to point out to the American public why this harm is being inflicted on them, so that the tech bro billionaires who stood behind Trump at the inauguration can pay even less taxes. That's an argument we'll make all day long.
Right. Now, I've had the great fortune of going to Rhode Island's beaches my whole life growing up. And one of my favorite things is the real sucker punch that comes from Adele's lemonade. Do you plan on throwing any lemons at people or like throwing some big punches like Rhode Island Beach style?
It would be nice to have some Dell's lemonade on the floor tonight. Some even like put a little bit of vodka in the Dell's lemonade to
I
cheer.
know, right? Well, you can stop by the Department of Defense's office. I'm sure they'll take care of that for you, Senator.
Oh yeah, Hegseth will be all over that.
Now, do you expect any kind of like what kind of pageantry do you think the Republicans are going to put on that you guys are going to try to push back on things like grandstanding or like just straight up lying? Like, what's the what sort of like your training look like right now, getting ready for this vote-a-palooza?
Well, at this point, you just go back and forth. We do our amendments, and you argue for your amendment for a minute or so, and then they have the chance to bring up an amendment. Their amendments are probably going to try to target, you know, people who are running in 2026 on
Hmm.
issues they like immigration and so forth. So it's kind of a duel back and forth with amendments that
Hmm.
put the other side in a bad position. In our case, it's just so easy because what they're doing is so destructive, and the reason they're
Okay.
doing it so awful.
Do you think this is the worst it's ever been?
Yeah, I would say pretty much. And it's particularly bad because while this evil is being done here in the Senate, they're also matching with an even worse bill over in the House. But then over in the executive branch, you have all the destruction being wrought by Musk and his
Hmm.
little muskrats who are
Hmm.
running around in all the executive agencies, wrecking stuff, firing people, poking into data systems, looking at private
Hmm.
individual records, and probably, we haven't proven this yet, but given the motives, probably trying to figure out ways to exfiltrate people's data out to the tech bros because that's what's so valuable to them. Data, big data for them is how they run their businesses. And with AI coming, people's individual data is a real treasure for
Mm.
the muskrats to figure out how to extract and get out to the billionaires.
Have you seen these people, these muskrat people around? Like, what can we be doing to stop them, or there's not a way right now?
There's not a way right now other than to call it out because
Hmm.
the president, who is directing
Is
all of,
enabling.
to the extent he's directing Musk at all, is talking to agencies that he runs.
Hmm.
So there's no intermediating entity. We just have to keep the pressure on, raise public pressure. Musk is already getting clobbered publicly. You've heard about like 1,600 phone calls per minute coming in,
Hmm.
crashing the Senate phone system, almost all of them about Musk. Why is this guy who nobody elected, who's a
Hmm.
creepy billionaire who has no affinity for regular Americans, why is this guy getting to decide what gets wrecked and what gets left alone in American government? What is he doing in my Social Security data? What is he doing in my health data? Those are
Hmm.
things that are aggravating people, and deservedly. So that puts a lot of pressure on Republicans to have to defend the indefensible for Trump.
Hmm. Is there anything that you guys are able to do about the federal workers who are being sort of unceremoniously fired and getting what I've called the dishonorable discharge because they're putting on their paperwork poor performance, which is like, something that'll be on their permanent record and whatnot. Is there anything we can do to stop that or to bring people back?
The lawsuits have tried. The unions just lost a lawsuit just in the last couple of hours
Oh,
with
wow.
respect to a temporary restraining order. And the judge said he didn't decide that they were wrong on the merits. He said, you've got to go to a different place. You've got to go to the labor board, not to federal court. So um, I think the key thing is going to be to exactly your point. When you tell somebody who has performed very, very well that their performance is not adequate and fire them over that, they have a cause of action.
Hmm.
I think there's going to be a lot of litigation that isn't like to prevent the firings, like the TRO that we didn't win,
Hmm.
but that is individual workers or groups of individual workers in class action saying, hey, you damaged my reputation,
Hmm.
you damaged my livelihood, and you did it illegally and you did it for a bad motive,
Hmm.
and you caused me real harm, and I'm entitled to damages. And I
Hmm.
think there's going to be a lot of that litigation. It's going to be very expensive for the government at the end of the day.
Right.
The problem is Musk and his little muskrats will have run off to tech land or to his billionaire land, and the government will be left to clean up the mess that they made.
That's what a lot of folks have been saying is that I'm like, what is the long-term implication of this for these people? Will they be held accountable? And what I've heard is no, they have an exit plan. They have an exit plan and the money to sort of dip out once they get what they want. Over the next 2 days, what would you consider? Oh, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say it depends on what they actually did.
Mm,
There are a lot of laws that they may well have broken once we get a better idea of what's going on. And in time, we will know. Litigation with discovery and depositions will bring it out. Congressional oversight in time will bring it out. Good reporting, like
mhm.
yours, Publica, and others, will bring it out. And when that happens, there can be real consequences. I mean, there are privacy laws that they probably violated digging into these data sets. And there are consequences for that. So don't give them a pass on there being consequences. We're a long way from conceding that. I think there will be for a lot of these little scoundrels.
Margaret has a good point here. If this goes through the courts and let's say these people are arrested, what's the chance that Trump just pardons them or they could be got on state charges rather than federal or Trump could pardon them?
Well, A, could well do, but B, you can't pardon somebody for civil liability.
Oh, okay. Right.
So if they're sued for having done something wrong in civil court, pardons don't apply. Pardons only apply to the federal criminal prosecution power.
So they could still be held like financially
They could be
responsible
financially
for what
responsible.
they do, which would be a
Exactly.
prison sentence of its own, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's something that you hope to do in the next 2 days that would be a win for you? I know you can't like fix it all for us, but what's like a little thing that you think you could bring folks a little bit more comfort if you could get it done?
I think the key at this point is to make sure that the public is rallying around the idea that programs that serve them, that serve their neighbors, that serve their family members, that serve their friends are being imperiled
Mm-hmm.
by a gang of billionaires and right wing extremists. Also, that gang of billionaires can get massive tax cuts for themselves.
Mm,
That this is actually a looting of the federal treasury by the richest people in America because they're so greedy, it's not enough to be the richest people in America. They want to steal even more from the public treasury. And the
mm,
more that message gets out there, the more people will rally, the more Musk's numbers will fall, the more Trump's numbers will fall, the more Republicans will feel willing and engaged to actually push back a little bit rather than have
mm-hmm,
spines of foam and roll over every time.
mm-hmm.
So I think that's really the battle right here to get public opinion stirred up so that Trump feels weakened, Musk is disgraced, and Republicans discover their spines.
And use that word. Use the word looting the treasury, stealing from the American people. Like call it what it is. It's a
Call it
crime.
what it is.
Thank you, Senator, for being with us. I know up next we have Senator Blumenthal coming in. I'm wishing you the best in there.
And here he is, and he's
There
looking
he
great,
is.
by the way. I'll turn
Thank
you
you for
over to the
taking the
beautiful
time.
Blumenthal of Connecticut, my Rhode Island's western suburb.